With short-term treasuries been always a safe haven for people investors to flee to, but won't the U.S. default affect them? Are they still a safe haven if there's a default by the U.S. government? If not, where would you go?
Yeah, it's a tough question because we haven't had a full scale default before,
Hmm.
and I guess that's what they're talking about in this question. And I've gotten asked this a couple times by some clients because oftentimes we will use T-bills, 90-day instruments as a safe haven. Uh, and so is a T-bill still safe, for example? Here's my outlook on that is like you have to take a look at kind of the overall scheme of things. Uh, you know, where do you go, right? It's a good question. The banking system, I think, isn't terrible. Anything under 250,000 with the FDIC insurance
Yeah.
has a good potential to be covered. But what's going to happen in a default is that there's still revenue coming in. There's just not enough money. I've said this last week, but if you have $100 that you need, right, and you have 75 coming in, you're borrowing the other 25,
Yeah.
but you still have 75 coming in. So where are you going to put that $75? What part of that $100 expense are you going to cover? And what part are you not going to cover? Who's
Hmm.
not that other 25 that you're not being allowed to borrow because the debt ceiling is capped? What are you going to do with that? I personally feel that a T-bill, a 90-day instrument, is something they'll continue to fund. And they've got lots of other things that they could not fund as far as that goes. Um, but it's hard to tell for sure.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, it's hopefully it's hypothetical question.
Yeah. One place that people have run to in the past is 2011. The 10-year Treasury was a place that people ran to. So in May, 2011, the Treasury was 3.2%, and by early July, it was down to 2.7%. So those Treasury prices went up.
Yeah, so there's some good appreciation there. That's a big move, actually. Made some money on that. And so people were running into a longer term treasury during a period of time of possible default. I would guess the reason for that is because, first of all, there's some money to be made,
Yeah.
because there was some appreciation happening, and sometimes that just gets things going. But also, you're buying something that's going to mature down the road, and so you're going to bypass the debt ceiling problems, right?
Yeah.
Even if it was a 2-year issue or a 3-year issue, you've got a 10-year treasury. You're going to get your money back at the end of that 10 years if you bought at par anyway.
Yeah, I don't think the market believes that the U.S. will default for a prolonged period of time, if they
Yeah,
default at all.
yeah, exactly. I would be surprised to see a default. There are ways around a default, right? We've seen some of the different things. And interestingly enough, the White House or Joe Biden said that they were considering the possibility of making the debt ceiling or determining that the debt ceiling was not constitutional based on wording in the 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
Right. And Yellen said that's not a good idea, but that doesn't mean they won't do it.
Yeah, if push comes to shove, you're going to have
Yeah.
to do something.
Yeah, I think if push comes to shove, some of these things that we keep hearing about that don't seem like a good idea might actually happen.
Yeah.
Instead of having a default, which seems worse than because there's this concept of minting $1 trillion coin and then borrowing against that, because they can make they make money, right? I mean, it's not based on something per se, so they can make $1 trillion coin, keep it in the treasury, and then borrow against that coin as collateral. Janet Yellen said that's not a good idea either. I agree with her, but you know what? Defaulting on our scenario or debt or
It's
not
way
being
worse
able
of
to
an
pay Social
idea.
Security or yeah, there's going to be a lot more pain and a lot more money lost for the government too. I mean, even this argument getting close to the edge in 2011. They determined that the S&P downgraded the U.S. debt, which means that the U.S. had to issue debt at a higher interest rate,
Hmm.
and it cost the U.S. Taxpayers, all of us, so $1.8 billion
Yeah.
extra because of that. So that's we're playing with fire here. The debt ceiling is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. Although it actually replaced a system that was even worse. Prior to 1917, Congress had to approve every single issuance of Treasury.
Oh.
And so this was the compromise that they just would issue them as a group. Okay, you can issue treasuries up to this level instead of approving every single one. we didn't have debt for some period of time. It wasn't a piece of the puzzle. Um, so it is it's still a dumb idea. I hope they make it unconstitutional and just take it out so we don't have these arguments and these problems every time. But anyway, it's a really good question. I personally feel that the short-term treasuries will be okay, just in terms of, if you buy a 90-day T-bill and you wait for it to come due, you get your money back. I'm assuming that still works.
Yeah.